Welcome to the Lean In Leaders podcast and our Inspirational Leaders series. In this two-part interview, we talk to Keith Canter, who is the CEO for First Community Mortgage. We talk with Keith in this first part of the series about how he started from really a one-person operation to a $3 billion a year business, the mistakes and the lessons he's learned along the way, and the inspiration he takes in his leadership style. We talk about the values of FCM and how they employ and endorse those values every day. So listen, it's a great interview with a lot of great key takeaways, and look forward to part two coming soon.
Back with you in the 1% studio for Lean In Leaders podcast.
We've been gone for a little bit, so yeah, it's nice to be back.
No one really knows that, and
we
have
no.
Well, now they do. So
transparency and leadership.
There you go, modeling the way. So with us today, we have a very special guest. His name is Keith Canter, and I met Keith recently in a conversation from a very close friend of mine, actually my wife. So knows Keith well and said Keith would be great for Lean In Leaders. And Keith, that came out of a true, genuine conversation just about how effective you are in what you do and the kind of organization that you lead and how you lead. And that, as soon as I heard that, I said, we got to get him on. And we really appreciate you doing that. That's exactly what we want here at Lean In Leaders, to talk to everyday leaders, different levels. You just happen to be a CEO of an organization, but that's what this is really about. So a little bit about Keith. Keith is the founder and CEO of First Community Mortgage, FCM. It's a residential mortgage company, and it was established quite a while ago, 2002. So it's been around for a long time. Based out of Tennessee, Keith prioritizes excellent customer service, and he values the needs and interests of all stakeholders, and that includes clients, employees, and shareholders. Keith is committed. Keith, you do a lot in the community. I was looking at your bio. I'm like, I got to start getting more active and giving back differently, because I love some of the things you're doing. You have something that you serve in, and I imagine even evolved. You're the chairman of the FCM Cares Incorporated, which is an employee-run foundation that supports various community programs. So kudos to you. That's absolutely fantastic. You also founded Andrew C. Rambo Memorial Scholarship, which helps fund MBA scholarships at Middle Tennessee State University's Jones College of Business. And you didn't stop there. You're also giving back by another organization, scholarship organization called the J.C. Gordon Scholarship at Tennessee College of Applied Technology in Shelbyville. So kudos to you. That's a lot of great things that you're doing to give back, and I'm sure so many people are benefiting from, that thoughtful contribution. So congratulations to that, and welcome to Lean In Leaders.
Thank you, Larry and Shad, for having me on. First, I'm very flattered and honored that Deb would nominate me for doing this. And it's amazing how great you can make yourself sound with when you write your own bio, right?
Well,
so it is all true, but
it's true.
It's good PR work.
Yeah, it's just important to step back sometimes, and also reminds other people that, in all sincerity, giving back is important, and that's a great demonstration of that. So, Keith, we thought we could talk to you about so many different things, but to start off, we would love to hear about your leadership journey. Like, how did you get to where you are today? And just tell us about yourself as a leader.
Yeah, for sure. As you mentioned, First Community was founded in 2002, so it has been around a while. And I started a company, just myself. It was really just one person in Shelbyville, Tennessee, a mortgage broker. Just had gotten in the business a couple years, and I started the company. That was my leadership start, right? Just me, myself, and I. And ran that company for 6 years before I sold to the bank, and we kind of started to grow into the company we are today. So I was college dropout, didn't really do well in school, no formal leadership training. Really everything that I've developed over this 30-year journey has been on-the-job training, just getting out there and really learning, and some really good people around me and good coaching. So the journey has been one of those kind of like on the job as you go. And, I think back, and could I have with some more formal training and better leadership coaching in the beginning, maybe circumvented some of the pitfalls that I went through for sure. But my journey is just one that's been over time, and be happy to share of those points along the way as we have a nice conversation to hopefully help the listener avoid some of the things that I did, where the mistakes that I made, and then maybe put the gas on and accelerate on some of the positive things that I've done.
Yeah, that's
right.
Chad, you're probably going to go here, so let's keep going and drill a little deeper, because I think that's probably rich. What were some of those situational or experiential, moments or defining moments where you're like, oh, if I would have, known that before, boy, I'm going to learn from that one. What are some of those experiences?
Yeah, probably the biggest leadership gap that I had when I got started, and even probably well into the FCM journey, was I really had the need or the desire for people to like me. And it really was kind of this kind of fear of man, or again, the desire to be liked. So I would compromise sometimes on decision making. We had a real friendly culture, family culture. And as that evolved, I was really not being the best person, the best leader, because I wasn't being fully honest. I wasn't being fully transparent in decision making and communication. And ultimately what happened was this family friendly culture kind of went off into the ditch, and we kind of evolved into a company that was more about nepotism, favoritism, and a little bit of preference over performance. And instead of dealing with problems head on, I would just kind of maybe move those problems to another area. And really, it prohibited the organization to be the best it could be. And really, we weren't putting the organization first in our dealings with people. And ultimately what it did was it not only inhibited the growth of the organization, but it also inhibited the growth of our team members. Because if I would be honest and I would share where they could improve, and I wasn't afraid that they might get mad at me, they could have maybe made the adjustments and improved much quicker. Or perhaps they were even maybe in the wrong company or the wrong role and just needed to find another organization that might suit their strengths better. So that's where we found ourselves, and that's something that we had to get corrected.
So Keith, talk a little bit about that, because I mean that is absolutely, I think, a fault of so many leaders, that they go with the people that they like and they're fearful of the people that they need to maybe correct, and maybe even a little bit leery of the people that can outperform them, right? And true leaders really are about honesty and just being timely with that communication. What was if you can draw back to back then, what was the precipitating event that really kind of got you to that place where you're like, you know what, I got to change the way I do this?
I remember exactly the moment when you're a mortgage company. We measure everything generally by profits and volume, right? Like how much volume is a mortgage company doing? And I can remember in 2012, we hit $1 billion in annual volume for the first time. And that was a big milestone. It was a really cool accomplishment. Not many mortgage companies, get to that spot. In 2014, we doubled that and went to $2 billion in volume in that short amount of time. But I remember in 2014, we made the same amount of money than we did in 2012.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
So we're doing double the volume with the same amount of profits. So I realized that we needed to have a little bit of a shakeup, and we needed to start, self-correcting some of these things that were going wrong in the organization.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I mean, that's a potential massive impact to a company, right? If whatever that margin was at $1 billion, at $2 billion, to have essentially half that margin left a lot on the table. I mean, that's a big, expensive eye-opening, really.
Another thing that was taking place is, as we were growing and expanding our business, what I would find is inconsistent treatment of employees. Like I said, our core group, or the people that were maybe local, they were experiencing a different FCM than somebody that might be in Knoxville or wherever it was outside of our market. And so what would happen is, invariably, I would talk to people that were local, and they would say, this is the best company ever. This is the greatest culture. I just love this place. And then we would hire someone that seemed to be a good person, and I would go have conversations with them, and they would say, this is like the worst place ever. And that inconsistency is like, I was trying to figure out, like, why are they having a different experience than someone that was local? And again, it was all about, we like this person, so we're going to treat them differently than this person over here that we don't know, or we're not going to give them a chance, or it's us versus them. And that was another big red flag, if you will.
Hey, Keith, just to follow up on the first point, I want to go back and just do a little reality check. The example you gave of that, I would call it like an epiphany or defining moment around just how do I create that managerial courage muscle so that I can be honest, kind of meet people where they are, but also, just be honest with people, right? So I can help them be their best. And because I'm hurting them, if I think I'm being compassionate, but I'm actually not helping them or myself or their teammates that is, in my opinion, in doing this for years around talent, performance, leadership, psychology, coaching, is probably the most consistent epidemic challenge that people have in leadership positions at all levels. And that does not limit the frontline leaders. As a matter of fact, if that behavior, if that habit isn't sharpened over time, it just follows that leader as they ascend to higher levels. So I just want to say, like, that is, I don't care what education people have, I don't care. That is just the biggest challenge that most organizations have. And I just needed to say that because, see, you brought that up as one of your defining moments, and I think that's a lot of people's. The other,
I
go ahead.
appreciate that. Still even battle it to this day, even though that I've had probably, a nice run of 6-7 years post that era of our organization. And, I got to the point where if I heard this person said this, like, I was like a heat-seeking missile to bring parties together, to have conversations, to just get it out there, and let's just move on for the benefit of the organization. So, but still, even to this day, I love people and I love the team members that are here, and hard conversations are tough, but they're needed. And, it's basically, once I got my mindset that we're going to do the best for the organization no matter what, whether that's a critical conversation that involved a separation, whether that was, maybe even, in our business over the last couple of years, it's been really difficult. So we've had to do layoffs, whether it's those, whatever it might be that we face, we need to go quick. We need to be transparent. We need to be honest. Brene Brown in her book, she talks about clarity as kindness. And that's so true. What people want is just to be told the truth. And you can do the truth in love. Right?
Yes.
That's how we speak to people.
It doesn't, and that's where I think we sometimes get stuck. We think it's this bipolar. I either can be honest or I can be nice. And the truth is, leaders need to be both, right? So that is a great story. I have one follow-up, Shad, for you, Keith, around the second kind of epiphany where you talked about kind of the two different cultural experiences that employees were having, and the further they were from the mothership, maybe the different experience that was being had. How did you remedy for that or solve for that?
Well, that's a great question, because it took a while. And I would think even today, people would probably even state that being closer to the mothership is better. That's probably in every organization, right? But, really it starts from the top down, clear and consistent communication. Every month in our organization, we have a takeoff call with myself and the president. We get on, we're talking about industry trends, company trends, where we're at to goals, what we're doing to optimize the organization, just being as honest and brutal as we can of what's going on in the organization. And then down below that, department heads having all hands on meetings. To be honest, I would even say that this move to a hybrid remote workforce that we have is probably actually helped, because there's no I'm here in corporate today. There's probably only 10 people here today, 10 or 15. And we have 500 employees, right? And so everybody's working kind of remote. So the world has kind of shifted to where what we're even doing on this podcast is very, very normal. It really all revolved, Larry, to more answer your question more specifically. We moved to a culture that was based on two guardrails. One was we were going to, remember I said preference over performance? One was we were going to start to measure everything, and we were going to be a performance over preference company where we had metrics, where we were about excellence, we were about performance. While at the very same, that was one guardrail, while at the very same time, we're going to be kind, we're going to love our people, we're going to meet them where life meets them, like we're going to get in the boat with them, right? And those were our two guardrails. And I've already told you the ditch on one side, and that's to become, too family oriented, or, where you have preference over performance. And the other guardrail keeps you from going over into numbers over people, right? To where it's all about the numbers. And so if you can maintain that healthy tension, it's not an either or. That's where you can have the magic of having a culture like I think we have today that we're fighting to protect. We're never going to be perfect. We're always going to vacillate between the two. But as long as we don't get too far one way or the other, we're in a
Great visual. I'm seeing the guardrails, and whether we think of them as fuel tanks and how high the water line is or whatever, the guardrails is a powerful visual, because especially when you talk about like falling off the edge of one of them or outside of the boundaries. So that's fantastic.
So it brings me to kind of, as you've been talking, I want to ask this question. So for you, and I want to clarify, so you had your mortgage business in Shelbyville, and then you sold. So now within the organization, it's FCM. What are the company values, and how do those align with your personal leadership values?
Yeah, so our values are very simple. Everybody has an acronym, right? Ours are STRIDE: service, teamwork, respect, integrity, drive, and excellence. And even as I say those, you can hear the guardrails.
Love
right?
it.
Drive and excellence is one, and respect and integrity is over on the other side, and teamwork and service are kind of down the middle. And what we try to do with our company values is kind of the same idea with the personal. Is we of course want to recognize values when they're taking place and reward people for when they exhibit the values. But I think the powerful thing that most organizations miss is they don't mind for the gaps or the absence of the values. And that's what we push our people all the time for, is where are we not living up to our values? Because, it's no secret. I go to church like behind me, and like everybody can talk about these standards set at church. But how often do churches really call people out for not living up to those standards, right? Sure. That's where you get hypocrisy, and I don't want to go to that church because everybody's, and it's the same thing in business. And where I'm going with this is we throw these values up on the wall. Everybody's going to agree to them. Like
that's why they come to work for you.
Yeah. Who's not going to agree to the values? But when you get your organization to the point where you're hiring and firing to your values,
amen,
that's when you got a healthy culture. And that's when people know that you're serious about the values. And you're not just, we have respect. Well, when somebody disrespects someone in the organization, just even if they're a top producer, we've got to go have conversations with and say, that's not allowed here.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not going to be tolerated.
Right. So you in there, right? You just balance those two guardrails in that point, right? It can't be one or either. It needs to be both, and that's for anyone, right? Because that's part of your credo.
Well, and it flows to the idea that people come to work for an organization, one, for a paycheck, because everybody has to have that in that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They need to have that security and that comfort in knowing that they have shelter and food and all of that. Then they can grow within an organization. So everyone picks that first, but they really select companies because those companies mirror those values that resonate with them. So people should come to work for you because STRIDE means something for them. Right. And then if you come to an organization that has STRIDE as its values, but doesn't practice STRIDE, you create friction with those associates. You guys said we're about integrity, but we're not practicing integrity. And that friction really then creates a rub with employee dissatisfaction and retention rates. So I'm curious, as you've lived the culture, have you looked at, as you're still, and culture is not a one-shot deal. Culture is an everyday monitoring, to your point, finding the gaps, filling in the holes on the road, in between the guardrails, right? Another visual. How have you looked, Keith, how has that helped you in your industry with retention and longevity, being able to really live and honor those values for your associates?
Retention is tough in our business when you talk about the salespeople, because they're coming and going, pretty frequently. But we have a good retention rate with our sales team. And also the market really dictates a lot of times the retention rates. Like, we've had the toughest 3 years in mortgage that I've had in my career.
Yeah.
And even the Great Recession was easy. I wouldn't say it's easier, but there were more transactions taking place during the Great Recession because people were doing short sales. They had driven down rates. People were doing things.
Yeah.
Now people are just stuck, right?
Yeah.
I'm in a low rate. I'm not doing anything. I can't afford. Like, we've just got buyers and sellers looking at each other. So this has been a really tough market. So that has some effect, obviously, on turnover. But we have been through this really difficult period. We've been able to retain some incredibly talented people. And I'll tell you, even in the face of layoffs, even in the face of wage freezes, I thought our employees, because these values that I just shared, those are kind of revamped values that we did over the last couple of years. And I thought our employees, when we rolled them out and we were talking about them and we were educated, I thought they would kind of this is boring, yawn, but they were eating it up. They were actually really excited to talk about values. And I was because it excites me to talk about values. I'm these, our people aren't going to want to talk about these. They loved it. So I would say to anybody listening out there, even if you have established values that are, 10 years old, pull them out and take your employees back through them and try to talk about the one way you can maintain culture as you grow or you're going through a difficult time is put it into process. And I know that sounds boring, but it's every meeting you have, find an opportunity to talk about values. Every meeting you have, find a way to talk about your mission, which our mission is to make the mortgage process simple and enjoyable for everyone involved, which speaks to external and internal. So what are we doing today to meet our mission, right? What is our vision? Those things, if you incorporate those into your process, your communication, then all of a sudden when you go from a company, we're at about 3 billion in volume today and we want to go to 10 billion. Everybody that joins our company says, well, when you get to 10 billion, you're going to be this big company. How are you going to maintain this culture? Simple, by putting it into process.
Yes.
And making sure that we're accountable, we're having the conversations, and as we go to 10 billion, that we stay the same company. It's we want to be big but feel small.
Yeah.
That's really it.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing what companies of all sizes strive. I'm not using they strive, right? They strive to do just that. And I think where a lot of organizations struggle of all sizes is that when they get caught up in the whirlwind, right? They kind of the values, the credo, the purpose, the mission sometimes moves behind the curtain. It takes energy and intentionality to keep it front and center. And those two guardrails, you don't have a true north. You have two true norths. Because as you were describing it in the beginning, I'm you keep saying they're both equally as important. That's what becomes the grounding wire for the organization. So that takes a lot of energy and intentionality.
Everybody asks, okay, when are we going to get to 10 billion? How fast are we going? We're going as fast as we can. We have people, that's their purpose. And we want to get there, right? We're excited about that. But we've said this all along, is we're not going to compromise values to get there. So we can't put a time frame on it because we might run into some great growth opportunities that don't fit with or align with who we are as a company. We're going to pass because I don't want to go backwards. And I only want to go forward. And Shad, you mentioned something I thought was really good. When you were talking about why people show up to work, And I think as a good leader, what you have to understand is while it's really exciting to some of our team members that we get to 10 billion, a lot of our team members show up for a different purpose.
Yeah.
And they show up because they want to help people get homes at our company. Like they want home ownership, or they're excited about FCM Cares that we talked about earlier, or they want to just get a paycheck. Whatever that is, as a leader, I want to connect them to that purpose.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter to me if they're excited about the 10 billion or number or not, as long as they're productive and they're helping us get there.
Yes.
Like if they really care about helping single moms or veterans get homes, well, gosh, that just helps us get to 10 billion.
Yes.
Like we don't have to have the same excitement over where we're going, just as long as we're all pulling the rope in the right way and on the bus to get there.
Well, and I think that's a great analogy, and it's a great insight in leadership. It's about, and you kind of alluded to this, sometimes it's about finding the right seat or the right organization. So if not everybody has to care about getting to that 10 billion, but if you've got someone that is just passionate about helping veterans get into homes, find a way to funnel that interest to them and let them do that the best they can do that. And when you do that, your associates feel valued, they feel heard, and you're going to let me do what I need to do, not tell me I have to have this ratio of VA loans versus FHA loans versus whatever, right? But rather go do what you need to do and you'll help us contribute. And when you do that, you just empower people to the best of their abilities. I think that's huge. I mean, that's leaders oftentimes can be afraid of just letting people shine by what they want to be. And if it is just to pick up a paycheck, or it's, hey, I know you have people in the organization that just love doing that clerical administrative work and file and, HUD disclosures or whatever, let them do it. Because if they do that, everybody else can go do what they need to do and specialize.
Yeah, and I think it's my job to make them understand that without them, we couldn't help the single mom get a home in a good, safe neighborhood where her kids are going to have a good school experience, or like whatever, you can pull at the emotional heartstrings for sure, but home ownership is an important aspect of the society that we live in, because it really is the fundamental piece to building wealth. And ultimately, we have to connect the stories that are taking place at the tip of the spear. The salespeople always get the glory and they always see those stories, but the people in the back that are doing the work, they're necessary, and I have to connect them with those stories.
Yes.
And when they see that, they're a part of that, and we can't do it without them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I heard Dave Ramsey talk about one time about how it's incredibly rare for people to find jobs where they can connect purpose. And when they do, it's really a rewarding thing.
I'm the anomaly, the 1% warrior. I'm the anomaly, the one they write the story for. I'm the anomaly, the 1% warrior. I'm the anomaly, the one they write the story for. I'm the anomaly, I'm the anomaly. I'm the anomaly. I'm the anomaly. I'm the anomaly. See, I'm the oddity. Welcome to my odyssey. I can't follow moles, so I don't do pottery.